What's up, guys? Josh here from 150 Music, a recording studio in Houston, production, mixing, mastering, pretty much do it all. But today what I wanted to talk about was how do you take your sessions that are production sessions, how do you take them and set them up for a mix session? My strategy and recommendation is that you never actually do a technical mix inside of a production session. There are just some things that you got to think about and just ways that you can take things further, one of those two words. If you go ahead and export stems, create a new session and start your mix fresh. But there are some things that you need to consider before you do that. So today I want to walk you through my process. I'd love to know what your process is. Let's get started. So for me, like I was saying earlier, I always want to start by not doing a mix inside of a production session. So I do a lot of work where people are working they do the whole thing with me in regards to production, recording, mixing, and mastering. So we're not sending stems to a mix engineer. Basically, I am the mix engineer, which is typically how it works these days. But the process of this would be the same as if you were sending files to a mix engineer somewhere else to mix your music. Or if you have Logic or any other program, it probably works the same. But if you're creating the music yourself and then sending it to me to mix, this also might be helpful for you. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start by, I have a folder here with all my current projects, and today we are mixing a few songs by this artist. So we are going to start with the Don't Play song, or no, let's start with the Do It Right song. This is my production session for Do It Right. We built the track out, she recorded her vocals. Sometimes, actually most of the time, I will have a session just for vocals where I will bounce all the music down to a 2-track and then we'll record vocals just in that session alone. But in this case, we just did the vocals right on top of the music. It worked fine for this song. So what I want to do first is, I really don't want to mess with the production session at all. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate it. So I'm going to Command D, and then I'm going to rename it. Do It Right Production. Let's call it Prep for Mix. So this way, the reason I duplicate it is nothing in the production session ever gets messed with. You'll see why I do that, because in the Prep for Mix session, I have to do a few different things to make sure that each individual stem is ready and sent properly to the mix. So I'm going to Command O and open that project. So here is our session for this song. The first thing you'll notice is I love color coding. I feel like drums should be red, bass should be orange, pianos and keys should be purple. Any of my ear candy stuff should be definitely green. Synths and vocals should all be certain colors. So I kind of have it broken down by colors in these track stacks. You can see that everything is categorized and organized a certain way. Okay, so the first thing that I noticed is, for some reason, the scratch vocal, it was muted. When I unmute it, basically this section of this region was unmuted for some reason. So I'm gonna go ahead and mute that, and then what I wanna do is I wanna hide that track. Control H will hide that track. Now I wanna look through and see what I did. Now, when we're building this session, you mute things, you add things, and it just goes from there. So what I wanna do now is, these regions right here that are grayed out, I kinda wanna clean it up. And so I know for sure that this is approved for the mix. So that means that at this point, we're not adding instruments or we're not adding anything. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna delete these and clean up all the drums. Okay, I'm just gonna go down, look, we don't need this bass stuff, ear candy stuff, these pianos are good. Okay, and then we have all our vocals. Well, from this, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna listen. One of the big things when it comes to mixing is determining whether your effects that you're using are there on purpose and are meant to stay, or if you should just bounce them raw. A lot of times, if it's adding to the effect of the sound, I bounce them with the effects. But if it's just compression maybe, or I don't know, EQ can go either way. But if it's something I want to redo in the mix, I might not leave the plugin on when I bounce the stems. But let's look at this. Let's go through a few of these sounds. Here's the kick filtered. I want to make sure that the naming is correct, because as I bounce export, I want to make sure everything's named so that when I go into the mix session, I can easily know where to put things. What I want to do first is listen to this filtered kick. Okay, and you can see on the channel strip here that that's a kick drum. I don't have any processing on it. I don't have any EQ on it, no compression. All that will happen in the mix session and will really enhance it there. But for this, that's fine as it is. Let's go to the kick. Okay, this is more of like a punchy kick. This is gonna give us that top end hit. When the 808 hits, this kick drum is gonna really punch on top. So I'm gonna go ahead and change this to, just to help me describe it a little bit better, is kick punch. Let's go to the hi-hats. Okay, pretty simple here. I don't have any processing on the hi-hat channel itself, so that's fine. Let's see what the cymbal sounds like. Sounds cool. Let's go to the snare. Okay, the snare does have, in this session, I really like the Soundtoys little plate. I don't know why, but for whatever reason, it's a very, it was on for some reason, but it was all the way on the dry signal. So we're just gonna, we don't need it. So we're gonna take it off because we don't need it. Let's listen to our other snare, or let's go to our snaps. This is a good example of where I don't necessarily at this moment want to commit to that reverb sound, but I like it. You can see it's another little plate. It's on a probably 20% dry of an 8-second decay time, and I'll probably do the same thing, but because I produced this track, I know what I want from it, but I'm not gonna commit to now. If I commit and print that reverb into the actual channel itself, I'm gonna be limited a little bit in the mix, and I'll be limited to that reverb sound, and maybe I wanna experiment with a few different things, or maybe have one snap that doesn't have all that reverb, and then the next snap have more reverb, and I wanna have that option. Let's go to this clap. Okay, just a normal clap. Nothing fancy on that. Here's the, well, on the clap here, we do have a little plate, but again, it's the dry, wet knob is all the way down, so we don't need it. Let's take it off. This is pretty much, if you work with me, you pretty much know that I do love cymbal swells. Not all cymbal swells, but particularly dark cymbal swells. I have one dark cymbal swell that really is like a part of every production I do. You can totally not do cymbal swells if you work with me, but I do love it. So let's listen to this. It's just so clean, it like sets the mood. But okay, this cymbal, it doesn't have anything on it, so let's give a little bit of the drums. Here's all the drums together. Now, what you're gonna hear is it's very simple, and for this track, that was what we wanted. We wanted the drums. We don't want to be too complicated with production, because as we get to the vocals are the most important thing, and you can very easily overdo your production. But all the drums there, they sound great. Let's go to this bass pad, see what's going on there. Okay, pretty cool. This pad does have an EQ on it. It's a high pass EQ, and so I'm rolling off some of the low end, like the very extreme sub bass. I'm gonna leave this on there, leave it engaged, because I don't wanna have to redo that in the mix phase. Okay, let's listen to our synth bass here. Really cool. Synth bass also has a little bit of EQ applied to it, so I want to leave that on there. Let's listen to our drum and bass combination. Pretty cool, pretty vibey. Okay, let's go to our pianos. I really love pianos. In this case, we're using Alicia Keys from Native Instruments, I believe. Yeah. One thing about this that you want to make sure that I want to take down some of the sustain pedal noise that we use. I don't really like hearing that. I mean, I like a little bit, but not too much. Cool. In the chorus of this section, or the hook of this section, we do have a piano melody. So it's like, now this this piano sound has a lot of reverb to it, and so actually what I want to do is I want to keep that. Actually, it's the same thing. It's the same concept. I don't want to be limited in the mix, although I like that sound. Adds to the mood if you put two pianos together. I like that a lot, but I'm going to do the same thing where I'm not going to commit to that reverb sound, so I'm going to take it off. All right, let's go to the ear candy stuff. I love ear candy. If you work with me, that's what I call it. Just something that tickles your ear, that keeps you interested. Okay, I really like this sound. Very moody, very dark. We have a plate reverb on there, and then we have some EQ rolling off. This is what it sounds like without that EQ. A little kind of nutso, a little kind of crazy. But if I put that EQ on there, kind of darken it up, put it underwater, some would say. I do have this is the delay, so it's a quarter note delay, but what I'm gonna do with this sound is I'm gonna take off the delay because I don't want to commit to it. But the reverb and the EQ, that is the sound of this instrument, so I'm gonna keep that. So I like that. Let's go to the other ear candy. Super cool. I'm gonna do the same thing where I don't commit to the delay here, but I'm gonna keep the reverb and the EQ there. Let's listen and see how all that sounds together. Let's do ear candy, pianos, basses, drums. Okay. Ooh. This is a very R&B track, female vocal, R&B. It's about love. It's very moody. I love it. Let's go to a couple other sounds. Let's listen to what we got here for the synth. A couple different synth sounds. This transition sound I love a lot. Sounds like crazy scary movie or something to me, but all this, let's listen to this. Okay, again, I'm gonna take the delay off that. Everything else is just the stock sound. Let's take the delay off that. We have our synth, our high synth. I like that. We're not really doing anything to it. You can see it's just the sound itself. Then we get into the vocals. Now on this vocal, I am fixing a few pitch things, and then I have my virtual mix rack. So my mix rack is, I've got the virtual preamp here, I've got the virtual mic. I love it, it's been great. I don't have any EQ applied, so I'm gonna ditch that. I do have some compression here, but I don't necessarily want to commit to this compression, so what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna turn it off, and that's gonna be I'm gonna leave that on as it is. Now, with this reverb from Softube here, I don't actually want to keep this, so I'm going to take it off. I'm gonna take all these, here's some more reverbs, some delays, and then here's that's a half note delay, which actually I didn't even put a half note delay on there. So anyways, now her vocal is gonna be very dry, but the character of the virtual mic rack is gonna give us the sound that we want, that we liked during the production session. And that's all we wanna do. Now, on these, she did these like little haze, like. Now you might not be able to tell, but I do have a micro shift on there, which is actually spreading it so that it's not right in the middle, but it's left and right. This I like the effect for. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna actually take off the reverb, and then I'm gonna leave I'm gonna leave all this on there. No, actually I take that back. So let's take off this because I know what I want to do. You can see that now it's a very dry vocal or whatever. So I want to, we'll just leave it like that, and I'll be able to go into the mix like that. Okay, hook vocals, same thing. Fixed a couple pitch things. No EQ, no compression really. So we can leave that. Same thing here. Let's take off these reverbs, take off these delays, make sure we're straight there. Let's see. Same thing here with these background vocals. Let's take these compression. So basically, if it's an effect that I want to redo in the mix, I'll take it off. And that's really important to me so that we kind of are starting. The reason that you're able to take things farther in the mix is because you're really digging into what EQ fits their vocals the best. You know, there's a bunch of tools that you can use, and I have ones that I like the best, but every song is different. If it's an R&B song, a country song, I find myself in the middle of a bunch of different types of genres, and I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, but I do want to respect the genre, and I want to respect the tools that it needs. Let's go ahead and do the same thing on this vocal. Let's take off. Okay, we don't have EQ or compression, but let's take off this plate, take off the effects. Okay, so now basically we have a session, and you can see it up here, with relatively low amounts of EQ, compression, all the effects that we used during the production session, we've taken those off. The last thing I want to do, which I don't necessarily know if it affects the export of all this, but I want to take off all the effects that I have on the stereo bus. Basically, every one of these channels is landing on this channel, which we're calling the 2-bus channel. Everything's being fed there. It will happen again in the mix session. My mix session has a bunch more plugins on that channel to make everything sound better that I can't necessarily put into the production session without there being a bunch of latency, a bunch of issues. So I just want to turn that off, make sure we're good there. Let's turn any of these effects off in the buses. Let's see. Bus 25. Okay. Once you have everything ready, I don't know why this is, but Logic doesn't. When I pull in the stems, Logic will automatically create the markers for me, but it doesn't. If I don't have the right tempo to start with, it can kind of cause it and set it up in a weird way. And I want the grid to match what the production was. So even if this is a track that I didn't record or I didn't produce, I would still listen to the rough and find the tempo of it. And then when I pulled it in, all of my delays are going to sync and everything's going to be more in the right spot. So in this session, this song is at 60. So I'm going to make a note of that, 60 BPM. Now I'm going to start at the top, and we are going to do a Shift Command E, and that's going to bring up my export dialog box. Okay, now with this, do it right. That's our session that we're working out, and we're inside the bounces folder. Now what I want to do is I want to create a new folder, call it Files for Mix. So all of these files, every stem is going to be bounced into this folder called Files for Mix. They're all going to be wave. I don't like to trim any of the silence, so I'm going to do extend the file link to the project end. Bit depth, stick to 24. I don't want to include any volume or pan automation because that's going to be redone in the mix. I don't want to bypass the effect plugins because there are some plugins that I want to go into the channel. So like the pitch things that I fixed, or the EQ that we use at the compression, those effects, the reverbs that we left on the ear candy stuff, those things I want to leave in. So I'm not going to check that. Normalize, I always turn this off. I don't want it to mess with it anyways. And then for this down here, what I do is I use the custom, and then I do the track name. So my custom tag for all of these is going to be Do It Right. It's the name of the track. Space, or Do It Right dash, and then it's going to give me the track name. So I'm going to name it Do It Right, which is the name of the track, and then it's going to give it the track name, and that's going to do it like that. So then I just click export. Okay, what it's doing is it's taking every single track and exporting them as a WAV file, and it's going to put it in that folder, and then when we start our mix session, we'll pull it all in and start a new session. This does take a little bit of time to export stems, but it's really helpful for me to have my brain separate between creative mode and really the mixing mode. Production is really, there's a lot of creativity there. Even when I'm mixing, sometimes that side of me will come out, and I'll make some production choices in the mix that maybe I should have made during the production session. But sometimes I can take things farther in the mixing session in a production way, but really it helps my brain to just make everything a WAV file. I'm not loading any sample instruments. I'm not loading any virtual instruments or anything like that. And then again, I'm reorganizing it, rebalancing, enhancing every element of the mix. The result ultimately for me is, I would say, 100% better. So if people are working on mixing a song, that's really important. I feel like it's just really important to put your production hat on when you're producing, and then to put your mix hat on when you're mixing. Actually, when I'm mastering, I do the same thing. If a mix gets approved, I'll take that into another separate session called the mastering session, and I'll be mastering it in that session by itself. So there's a couple different hats that I feel like you got to wear that help you take your music farther. Theoretically, you could mix and master all in one session, but I don't believe that you're going to get the same results. That's my theory, and that's the way that I've been working for a long time now. Okay, so that has exported all of our stems. Okay, so let's save it, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to Command Option W, and it's going to close Logic, but it's not going to actually, it's going to close that session but not close Logic. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to my templates folder. I have a mix template folder that I update. I try to update regularly. This I actually updated it this morning. So let's call it mix template March 2020. Now it says template, but it's not like I'm just putting the same vocals effects on every vocal that I work with. Really, the template just means that it has some common ways that the routing is set up, the grouping is set up. It's not really that I'm applying the same effects or the same treatment to every single instrument or every single element of the song. Let's copy this folder. Let's go to Daronia's Do It Right song. We have our production folder there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to right click, turn this into Do It Right Mix. I'm going to highlight and copy so that I can change this as well. Now, so here's our mix session. So I'm going to Command O and open our mix session. Okay. Now from here, basically what I'm going to do, my first thing is to change the tempo to the tempo of the song. So I'm going to 60 is where we were at. I'm going to go to my Do It Right production session, bounces, files for mix. Okay, so here's all of our files that we exported from the production session. We got the name of the song plus the name of the track. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is, for whatever reason, and maybe I'm doing this wrong, but if I drag all of these files into Logic itself, it doesn't create the markers that I want. But if I drag one, like this Do It Right bass, if I drag it in, you can see that it creates all the markers for me in the right way. So maybe someone can comment and let me know what I'm doing wrong. But once that happens, then I highlight all of this and I take that to the same start of the session, create new tracks. That's going to take a second to bring all those files in. Now from here, first thing to do is to go and color code our, I'm a big coloring guy right here, but I'll color code all of the markers that we have. Verses are always green, hooks or choruses are always red, and then turns, intros, outros are typically blue. So here's all of our stuff. Okay, now what I'm going to start to do here is I'm just going to start to organize. I'll start with the drums. So I'm going to kick punch, hi-hats, snaps. We got the snare, cymbals, claps. I think that's most of our drums. Okay, so I'm going to shift and click and hold, and all that will be highlighted. Now I'm going to drag this up above this blue one right here. Now if you look at it in this mixer window, all of these are my drum tracks. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to send those to bus 20, which is already pre-labeled drums. All of these faders are going to be sent to this drum channel, to this drum bus. Let's do the bass. Every instrument group has kind of the same setup. Oh, let's put this swell up there with the drums. Put it on the 20, bus 20. Okay, we got the bass. Now all of these channels also come in already like at unity gain, which we don't want, so I'm going to put them down to 0. And then for whatever reason, I'm going to turn this input off so we know we're not doing that. Now, here's all our ear candy stuff. So let's do this. Let's do this. There's the ear candy. Okay, these are background vocals. I'm just kind of putting them in the, maybe that's ear candy, I'm not sure. Okay, here's some piano stuff, which is like our keys. Okay, here's some more hook vocals, maybe that's lead vocals. Synth bass, let's put that up with the bass. Okay, here's some synth stuff, keys stuff. Here's some vocals. So now if you look at it in this the mix session, what I want to do is I'm going to, again, recolor code everything. Nope, my drums are red. I like my basses to be blue. I like my keys to be some sort of purple. And I'm also going to change the routing of this as I go. Those are all going to the keys. My bass, I'll just go backwards for a second, always goes into the bass channel. Okay, these are my ear candy elements. I don't know, maybe yellow. I'm kind of debating on ear candy, like what color it should be, but that's going to go into 23. Okay, all of these are my lead vocals. They're going to go into bus 24. Let's change my lead vocals to that. Okay, background vocals, just the next purple down, I guess. All right, let's put these into 25. Okay, so this is our song. If you look back down here in the arrangement window, at this point what I like to do is highlight everything. I do Option Shift C, and it colors everything in the same, you can see the same color. Now everything at this point is waveforms. When I export it from Logic, some instruments are stereo instruments, so those things get exported as stereo instruments. Some stuff like this kick, I know I don't want the kick to be a stereo in this stereo thing in this song. So one of the things I do in Logic is I just change this little button to mono, and although it still looks on the waveform as stereo, it's a mono track. So at this point, basically, I'm gonna go back through and I'm gonna listen. I'm also gonna go through and clean up regions like this. And to be honest with you, there might be a faster way to do this, but I kind of enjoy this process of, and I might make things like bigger so that I can really see what I'm doing. But I really think that organization is a big important key. I don't really know, this doesn't really help anything, but I just don't like to look at it with just solid blocks all the way down for whatever reason. It helps me with my brain, the way that it organizes stuff. So now I'm gonna go here. Okay, go to my keys, see everything is. This also really quickly helps me identify if I want to listen to something specific. I know where it is and where it's not without having to look too much. It's just like it helps me just quickly identify something. Okay, this is our mix for the Do It Right. And what I'm gonna do here is I'll just go to, like, I don't know, let's listen to the chorus part. And what we do is we just start with rough balancing, just making sure that everything just kind of get in the ballpark. So let's go to this section. Just listen through. Here's our kick drum. Alright guys, and that is essentially how to prep a mix. Maybe next time we'll talk about how to actually mix it or show you the end result of this, but the conclusion of this video is really just that you separate production and mixing, make it a separate thing. You can take things farther, and let me know if you have any questions. If you want to see more of this kind of content, comment below, let me know. I want to continue to make content like this, so that will help other engineers and other upcoming producers. So y'all have a great day, and we'll talk to you later.